How does he know? How did Dave know about this? My marriage is over, I just know it. The courts will find Dave to be the primary caretaker of our children, and he will be awarded custody. I will be a social outcast, shunned by virtually everyone in this church-going community, forgiven by the priest with soft words but with a condemning expression on her face. Just like he did with Mary Skelton. She only lasted about 3 months after her husband found out about her affair. 3 lonely months when the rest of the community shunned her, even though the priest forgave her. This community truly hates cheating spouses. I slammed on the brakes and screeched to a stop, stopping 2 meters from colliding with a little girl who had run into the road chasing a ball. She looked to be about 3, about the same age as my Paula. I was driving too fast, too engrossed in my enormous problem. The child's mother scowled at me from the sidewalk, even though it was her fucking fault for not supervising her child. I looked around and saw that I was next to a large park, 5 minutes from home. I suppressed my fears, drove another 200 meter with shaking hands, and stopped before I knocked over someone out of absent-mindedness. How could Dave even think? No, that's stupid. Once Dave found out I was having an affair, it made sense that he would think poorly of me and want to cover his bases. He may run a small editorial office from home, but that doesn't mean he's stupid. Far from it. As soon as he found out, of course, he thought that this was not my first case and began to do DNA tests on the children. But how the hell did he know? Both Carl and I were so careful. The thoughts reminded me of Carl. I picked up my phone and moved it onto Carla, if Dave ever asked, a colleague who had recently started working. My motto was to stay as close to the truth as possible. My message, can you talk? While waiting for an answer, I continued to kick myself. Why? Oh, why did I let this smooth-talking little shit seduce me? No, come on, be honest, it's not fair. The way we slept the first time was not seduction and is understandable. This happened while we were out of town. We had just spent 2 whole days discussing an exhausting deal, celebrated with too much champagne, and fell into bed together. If I had stopped at the first case, everything would have been fine. I would have a secret that I would regret until my last day. A serious secret that could only harm my husband and family. But I, or should I say we, alas. We were both caught up in the excitement of sleeping with someone after more than 10 years of marriage. The charm of the illegality of it all, the thrill of mischief, the thrill of knowing that we were deceiving our spouses and successfully hiding it from 2 people who knew us so well. Or they didn't hide it very well, as it turns out. My thoughts were interrupted by a message from Carl. No, I'm having dinner with Mary and the kids. What's the matter? Well, they say misery loves company. He knows. Dave knows about us. How the hell did Dave know about this? We were incredibly careful. We only got together when we were away, and then only if we managed to rent adjacent rooms. We never entered the door of the same room together. We always used condoms, even the first time. We behaved absolutely normally, both in public and when we were at home with our spouses. Tink. Crap. Mary behaves normally, so he didn't tell her anything. What do you think he will say? How angry is he? Don't know. We haven't talked yet. I ran away as soon as I discovered that he knew. This time I didn't have to wait long for an answer. Please beg him not to tell Mary. Selfish little idiot. Fuck my marriage, as long as it doesn't concern him. Asshole. I'll probably tell his wife if Dave doesn't do it. As I said, misery loves company. So how were we discovered? I made sure that my love for my husband did not suffer. Didn't introduce any new positions or techniques that I learned from Carl. Damn chance. Sex with Carl was vanilla and uninspiring. It was smaller, lasted less time, and wasn't nearly as varied as my Dave. In fact, if it weren't for the illegality of it all, it wouldn't have lasted the 6 times over 7 months that we actually had. How unfortunate that we were discovered before I was planning to end our affair after our next trip in 2 weeks. Crap. Focus, Megan. How we were discovered doesn't matter. We were exposed, and now my husband trusts me so little that he is doing DNA tests on our children. My mind went back 20 minutes when I arrived home late, too late to enjoy dinner with my family. Luckily, Dave worked from home, took the kids to school, and cooked dinner 6 nights a week. I was supposed to cook on Sundays, but I usually went and got takeout. Let's just say cooking is not one of my strengths. Entering the door, I froze at the terrible sight. Dave sits on one of the kitchen chairs with a cotton swab, wiping the inside of Jillian, our 5-year-old daughter's mouth. An open, sterilized package lies on the table. Peter, our 7-year-old son, was also standing there, either waiting his turn or having already finished. I've read enough stories and watched enough TV to know I was watching the opening act of a DNA test. My initial reaction was rage. How dare Dave think the kids aren't his? I wasn't a cheater. Or was I? Knowing that I needed to think about how best to get through this, I simply turned and ran away. Just before I did, Dave turned to look at me with a neutral expression. I brought my hands to my cheeks, remembering the feeling of the blood draining from them, which was a blatant admission of the truth of what the testing accused me of. 20 minutes later, I'm here, contemplating the destruction of my family and my community. I knew Dave. I knew him as well as he knew himself. Whenever he was ready to confront me, he did so firmly and calmly. He wouldn't want the whole city to know that he had been cuckolded. If I can't stop him from divorcing me, I'll ask him to do it quietly. Just say that we've grown apart. That way, even if I lose my marriage, I can still stay in town and see my kids, possibly sharing joint custody. I really love them. My mind wandered for God knows how long, running through different scenarios of how Dave would react, trying to find the one that would allow me to lose the least. Suddenly, I realized that I was talking like a defeatist. I'll use my knowledge of Dave and assume that separation will be a given, and the best scenario would be a quiet divorce. But what if I'm wrong? What if I put myself at Dave's mercy? I'll tell him about the forgivable first time and the regrettable continuation. He doesn't want a divorce any more than I do. Of course, his faith in me will be shaken, and it will take years for him to fully trust me again, but I will still have respectability and support from the community. If you do this, Megan, you'll have to be completely honest with Dave. One whiff of a lie, and you'll reach the curb faster than a fleet-footed cheetah. I looked at my watch. A little less than 2 hours had passed since I discovered that I had not been as clever in hiding my affair with Carl as I thought. 2 hours since I went from being confident in my marriage to fighting for its very life. 2 hours since I saw my husband testing my children's DNA had raised my blood pressure 100 points. I quickly typed a message. I'm on my way home to ask your forgiveness for my affair with Carl. Please don't do anything hasty. Then slowly drove my car home. Epilogue. Megan. Well, what happened after that surpassed my worst nightmare. 10 minutes after sending my message, I reached home. As soon as I pulled into the driveway, Dave ran out the door, told me, "Stay here and watch the kids," and took off screaming in his car. Later, I found out that he went straight to Carl's house, and when my lover opened the door, he broke his nose with one blow, shouting, "You're cheating with my wife, right?" These words stopped Carl's wife from calling the police, and together with Dave, they learned the whole story when Carl begged them to call him an ambulance. Since Carl said he was hit, and his wife said he hit the wall himself, the police investigation came to nothing. By the time he returned from the hospital, the locks on his house had been changed, and his wife had made an online appointment with a divorce lawyer. How do I know all this? Dave came straight home and told me to pack my bag and leave. Taking one look at the fire in his eyes and the bruises on his knuckles, guessing where they came from, I did as he asked and ran to a middle-class motel. The next day I saw a bandaged Carl at the bar having breakfast. Any hope that Dave would keep a low profile was dashed early in the afternoon when Carl and I were ushered into the COO's office and summarily executed. She didn't cite any morals because our contract simply said she shouldn't hire scum like us. Oh. I realized what the near future would be like when I called all 3 divorce lawyers in our city, but no one answered my call. When I went to the diner for dinner, the waitress refused to acknowledge my existence. The nail in the coffin, however, was when I met Carl and learned that his family, friends, and former work colleagues already treated him like a leaper. Within 2 days, spurred on by a visit from the motel manager who said his establishment was fully booked. Yes, that's right. Carl and I resigned ourselves to the inevitable and left town. We didn't want to become social boogeymen like we saw Mary Skelton become last year when she was caught cheating. Intrigued by our story? Like and subscribe to the channel, and you will be shocked by the ending of the story. We traveled 300 kilometers and started a new life together. This didn't last long. I know I'm probably saying something so damn obvious, but when two scammers team up, there is no trust. Stupid. I never realized how important trust is in a relationship until one evening I had to fight the urge to check his phone while he was in the bathroom. By the time I finally worked up the courage to ask Dave if I could go back into town to visit the kids on the weekend, they had all found replacements for me. He was a fine catch, and as soon as he was free, the vultures, being attractive singles and widows, declared their interest. By the time I got myself organized, Dave already had a neat set of shoes under his bed, my kids had a half-sister, and they were already calling another woman Mom. Now that I'm too old to have another family, all I can do is sit and contemplate the single life ahead of me. Epilogue of Dave. I lie here, looking at the bedside clock, 11:05 p.m. Ruth's soft breathing as she lies next to me reminds me of our sexual marathon of the last 2 hours. Crap. Sex with someone new after 10 years with the same woman felt good. Damn good. We were doing something that was borderline unacceptable. Yes, life is good, if a little quirky. My wife cheated on me, but before I could mourn the demise of that marriage too much, I was seduced by someone younger, prettier, and more sexually adventurous. The surreal last day of my old marriage still confuses the hell out of me. Maybe if I process this in my head for the 10,000th time, it will finally make sense. How did everything go? On the last day of my marriage, Megan ran home, and without saying a word, she simply turned and left again. I heard her car start and drive away. I was busy for a few more minutes, and by the time I called Megan's cell phone, it was busy. Finding no sign of her presence, I began to put the children to bed, and they quickly fell asleep. Unfortunately, it wasn't unusual for them not to see their mother before they went to bed. I went into the kitchen and was just about to call Megan again when the house phone rang. The display showed an unrecognized cell phone number. The next few minutes, from memory, went something like this. Hello, this is David Brown. Hi Dave, this is Carl. I knew Carl, of course. He had started working with my wife some time ago. I saw him at several work events and was even invited to his housewarming party. What was his wife's name? Rebecca? Beck? Something like that. Very handsome, with a good figure, and a couple of years younger than Megan and me. Carl, on the other hand, seemed boring to me. Arrogant, self-righteous, he looked down on me. A legend in his own mind. The last person I want to talk to after a hard day. That's why my next words probably didn't sound very friendly. Yes, Carl, so what can I do for you? What will be required for this? I had no idea what he was talking about and remained silent in confusion, forcing him to continue. If my wife finds out that I have been having an affair with Megan for the last 6 months or so, she will cut off all my dignity and I will lose my children. So, I'll be honest, Dave. What does it take to keep your mouth shut? I don't remember dropping the phone and collapsing on the floor as the devastating news that my loving wife had betrayed me in the worst possible way hit my mind. I didn't suspect anything and couldn't believe it. Still, the plea in Carl's voice was quite convincing. My mind then turned to a recently, frequently discussed issue. Why has my wife seemed to be emotionally distant from me and the kids over the past 6 months or so? Nothing radical, just definitely something there. I later realized that the first stage of grief, denial, lasted less than 30 minutes. This stage gave way to anger. I was filled with blind rage, masking the pain of my loss. I still had enough self-control not to snap at Megan. This led to prison. However, her lover was a completely different person. As soon as I heard that Megan was back, I drove to that asshole's house, and with all the anger I had, I punched him. The feeling of bones and cartilage breaking under my fist made me smile even now. Carl's forced confession while he was bleeding was completely unnecessary for me, but necessary for his wife. Releasing my anger allowed me to go home and calmly tell Megan to fuck off. As I listened to the light snoring of my woman in bed, I realized that I was no closer to solving the mystery than the last 100 times I had thought about it. Why did Carl sow the seeds of the destruction of his own marriage by confessing to me when I was completely unaware? Once again, I couldn't help but think that Megan's strange behavior that evening, when she came home from work and immediately ran away without saying a word, had something to do with all this. I replayed that evening in my head again. I prepared dinner as always. Megan confirmed she would be late, so we sat and ate with the kids, chatting as usual. Then it started to clear up. Jillian complained that her mouth hurt. I grabbed a flashlight, peeled back her lower lip, and saw a sore. Walking over to our first aid cabinet, I grabbed a tube of Bonjela and one of the individually wrapped cotton swabs, opened it, applied it, and used the cream as directed. Absolutely nothing to do with the mystery in question. Damn it, I'm starting to think I'll never know. Turning on my side, I put my hand under the Sleeping Beauty's head and hugged her, gently kissing the back of her head. She snuggled up to me and purred slightly. Screw the mystery. Life is good. Please like and subscribe to the channel and you will never be cheated on.